projects are necessary regardless of the magnitude of these projects. If money enables them to be built, then there's a question to arise, because it wasn't a lack of concrete, steel, or anything over labor. It was just a lack of money. Money does not build these bridges. So the dependency on these fundings shows the well-being, let's say communal well-being of society depends on this. Is a critique of the very wealth money, the wealth we are looking for. It's a critique of it. If everything depends on the money to be made, then really, like in this society, like in this stage right now, people are put out of business, out of work, business as well. Everything, nothing materially has stopped to exist. They just are not worth being produced. It's not for the use value, it's just for the exchange value. If it can be obtained, they don't produce it, regardless of the needs. And this is not new in the crisis. It's just more obvious because now everyone is out of work. And obviously businesses are being hurt. But this depends on them. I would be redundant, so I hope it's clear.
But money is just facilitates the distribution of goods and services. So you got to have something like that, or how you keep your ledger straight. And you can't get rid of that. You know, if they tried the barter system or something, that might work on a small level.
Yeah, and you gave us three good points, three lessons that give us some understanding of the crisis.
I agree.
From let's say the capitalist point of view, I mean, what would say Bernanke be telling the bankers right now that they, in terms of you screwed up, or you need to change, or is there any? Maybe they're telling them nothing because they just sort of go on, and they're not going to change. In some ways, this the credit crunch, you said, could kill a capitalist economy, and how are the banks addressing that right now? Other than they're getting $700 billion from the country. Billion.
Well, apart from what they say and think, one could say, how are they addressing the issue? What are they doing with the money?
Yeah.
They're doing their business.
Well, what are they doing with the money? Or, are they, saying, hey, you've got to reform the industry somehow? Or?
No, and I would ask, why should they?
Well, because they ran into a credit crunch.
Right. Well, I pointed out before, whether Bernanke or how he's outraged at them, I'm not exactly sure. But there has been a lot of outrage, obviously, at the whole financial industry. Yeah. And the outrage is to say, you guys screwed it up for us all. You guys are so important for us. If you don't provide loans, we're all screwed. And instead of providing the useful loans that we need, you went off in your own casino, made speculative creations you didn't even understand yourself, and now we have an economic crisis. What underlies that outrage, that attitude? What underlies it is the idea that banks have a very important responsibility, that they're crucial for us, that they're actually a means for my livelihood. If we don't have banks, then obviously we can't produce useful goods, I can't have a job, my family starves, I starve. And that's why they at the same time say, that's why the banks need to get back to business. Their outrage of the banks is based on the fact that they accord the banks a very good role, actually. They have a very high opinion of what banks do. Provide loans. What I want to say is, instead of being outraged at bankers, it's important to understand what banks do. Banks provide loans for the purpose of enrichment. The fact that the economy can use those loans is a reason to criticize the economy. It proves that the purpose of the economy is not to produce useful goods, not to create livelihoods for people, but to turn money into more money. So instead of outrage at the banks, and while hoping that they get back to business, actually I would abandon my hopes for recovery and start to criticize both the banks and the economy that they serve. Do you see what I'm yeah.
So I'm wondering, once we start doing that, when we stop distinguishing between good banks and bad banks, I mean, what are we looking towards? It's socialism, right? I mean, so how do we get there? The educational places, staff administration, and what is this group ruthless criticism? How do they do?
Well, let ruthless criticism talk for themselves, but I mean, you're asking me what, where does it go from here? What do we do from here? I like to take small steps. And the most important step, regardless of what comes afterward, is, well, not to be immodest, but to do what we're doing here tonight. The attitude of most people towards the crisis, it could have taught them something. The crisis could have really taught them how much the capitalist economy deserves to be overthrown, to be replaced with a means of production or a mode of production that produces for people's needs. Obviously, they didn't learn that lesson. The mood of the public, the stance of the public, I've said a few times tonight, they recognize in the crisis that they're very dependent upon the help of the banks, that they're very dependent upon profit making. And for that very reason, they hope that the same business gets going again. It would be a huge step, and that's not something I would underestimate, to get the people to change that attitude and say, if it's the case that the entire material, to say it with a bit of pathos, the entire material life process of society comes to a halt as soon as that purpose is no longer achieved, turning money into more money, then that's a reason to criticize that system and not hope for its recovery. As far as that goes, then I would say, spread that word. If you understood the message, spread the word. And then we'll see what comes then. I really wouldn't, like I said, wouldn't underestimate that attitude change. How much would be won with that? How much would be gained from that? And that's all we really have the capacity to do at the moment.
Unions too, labor work. Unions in the U.S. supporting those is there potentially a vehicle for massive change? I think work stoppages can do a lot.
Well, first of all, it would kind of depend on what the unions want. If I look at the unions right now, they're certainly not doing anything that I could support in any way. In fact, the opposite. Certainly. And, even where they say, I would believe them, they regard themselves as representatives of the workers and to do something for the workers. What they say is we really need to create jobs and to do everything so that people get jobs. That's the recipe for the crisis. And quite logically, what that consists in is making compromises across the board.
Right.
Right.
That's the difference between management workers and their.
Right. Well, that's definitely a difference, and the way the unions are acting sounds a lot like the management.
Right.
And what I would say is, as far as material interests of workers go, they're certainly not representing them. What they are representing are the material interests of the workers in this economy, and that's exactly the problem with unions. They say, your interest in this economy is to have a job. That's the precondition for everything. Therefore, everything needs to be done to create jobs. And again, quite logically, that means improving conditions for employers to make money. And I would say that's a reason not to support, a movement that seeks to create jobs like that.
Maybe it helps. It's one thing that you have to live selling your body to a capitalist, working for your labor, being paid wage labor. It's another thing, taking this as an opportunity and not as a threat. See, I would say, well, we have to work, and as long as we can't pass this economy right now, let's negotiate for the highest possible salary, and so on and so on. Because competition hurts the single worker, it would all go cheaper because the negotiation skills they have is non-existent. They do not have money to begin with. They have to survive in a system where the access to goods is only through money, provided only for labor. Okay, this is it. This is the scenery, the situation. It's a total different attitude and an agitation of the union towards their members if you say, let's fight for jobs. And what I meant with that's a threat, because jobs are the jobs of the capital. You know, you don't own a job, you have to work, and it's the job the capitalists offer and create for one purpose only, and this is the only way it exists, to enable him again to make a profit. The profit itself is always his need, his foundation to even increase the burden of the work itself, buying new machinery, making them work longer, and so on, and even increasing the parts of competition among labor. So jobs is nothing promising. Unfortunately, you have to do it right now, and it's a prerequisite right now to survive. But that's it. It's another. That would be an interesting agitation. The union would turn around and say, "Okay, right now we do this, but as soon as possible, if we're enough, let's get rid of wage labor." And
You can't get rid of that. If you tried the barter system or something, that might work on a small level.
Yeah, and you gave us, 3 good points, 3 lessons there.
everyone is out of work, and obviously businesses are being hurt. But this depends on them. I would be redundant, so I hope it's clear.
But money is just facilitates the distribution of goods and services. So you got to have something like that, or how you keep your ledger straight.
Projects are necessary regardless of the magnitude of these projects. If money enables them to be built, then there's a question to arise, because it wasn't a lack of concrete, steel, or anything over labor. It was just a lack of money. Money, again, does not build these bridges. So the dependency on these fundings, work, business as well, everything, nothing materially has stopped to exist. They just are not worth being produced. It's not for the use value, it's just for the exchange value. If it can be obtained, they don't produce it, regardless of the needs. And this is not new in the crisis. It's just more obvious, because now it shows the well-being, let's say communal well-being of society depends on this. It's a critique of the very wealth of money, the wealth we are looking for. It's a critique of it. If everything depends on the money to be made, then really, like in this society, like in the state right now, people are put out of business, out of